Financial literacy, Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University. America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free, multilingual, borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity.
Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Financial Focus University. Feel free to have a seat and learn about personal finance. My name is Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO, and I will be your host and teacher for today. Our general curriculum when it comes to this show is pretty much threefold. We like to share weekly financial news. We like to share weekly market information. And we also like to share weekly tips and strategies when it comes to personal finance. So when we talk about our lesson plan for today's show, we got an action-packed show for you, ladies and gentlemen. Please feel free to grab a pen and a pad. Our first segment, which is our traditional segment, we'll be talking about Bidenomics. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you know that for the first 6 months, right, we're now pretty much almost done with 6 months. How is our economy going? We're going to talk about that in a few moments. Our second segment is how to make a proper budget, part 3. This is the third part of a 4-part monthly series that we're doing on budgeting. If you remember, we talked about our first 2 parts about certain misconceptions we needed to clarify, and then how to generally make a budget and classifying the budget. Today, we'll talk about what is the right budget mechanism for you. If you remember our series, there are several different types of budget. Which one is right for you? We will talk about that. And our third and final segment, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to have an Ask the Question segment. We're going to have a segment that we're going to be going back and forth with every now and then called The Professor's Opinion. And I will give you a short opinion in regard to the Federal Reserve Board this week that made interest rates go up 75 basis points. So let's start off with Bidenomics and our first segment. So when we talk about the economic indicators for the week, well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been keeping track of your money, then I'm sure you probably got at this point more gray hairs than I do. So what happened financial news-wise for the week? When we go to our first slide, you'll see, well, we have producer inflation numbers that came out. Let me emphasize the word producer, ladies and gentlemen, because this is not consumer information. This is business inflation. And you can see it went up. It went up 9.6%. Retail sales, right? That's the consumer buying basic goods and services. Well, those sales now, looking at department stores and everything else, are starting to go down. The Federal Reserve Board, as you heard me say a little bit earlier, they made a very big pronouncement this week. They said interest rates will go up 75 basis points. Ladies and gentlemen, if you remember on our last show for the last couple of weeks, I've been indicating to you that short-term rates have been going significantly higher than long-term rates, right? That in some senses, the Federal Reserve Board is now catching up. Consumer spending. Well, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, consumers still have money to spend. I don't know where they're getting it. I guess it must be from their debt, or maybe it's from their savings. But wherever it is, they're spending it. So those were the economic information numbers of the week that the stock market was trying to analyze. And then on our next slide, you will see they were trying to analyze it with something that is very dangerous in our economy. On the next slide, that slide, you will see that is the consumer price index. And there are two things with that chart, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to recognize. Number one, you'll see that chart says 8.6% year over year. And as I said in the past, I don't like to talk about what happened in the past when I talk about inflation. I like to worry about what's going to happen in the future. So inflation year over year for the future has gone up 12%, not 8.6%. How did it get so high? Well, you'll see in a few moments, ladies and gentlemen, it has to do with what I call inflation and corporate greed, but we'll get there in a couple of minutes. So, how did the financial markets digest all of this information? When we go to the next slide, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be a little shocked as to what you see, because what you actually see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday was actually a plus week, right? You see Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, the market went up. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, the market went up a total of 2.7%. Isn't that wonderful? What happened to Monday and Thursday? Oh, God, it went down. It went down 7.4%. So mix all that in and get ready, ladies and gentlemen, as we go to the next slide. So how did the markets do for the week? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the stock markets for the week did a negative 5.7%. That is the 10th out of 12 weeks that we've had a down market. How did the bond markets do? Well, the bond markets are stabilizing a little bit, but they're still going up. You'll see the 2-year bond is now, it's gone from 3.06% to 3.17%, or a rate increase of 3.5%. And with the 10-year bond, that amount has gone up as well. It's gone now to 3.23% from 3.16%, or a rate increase of 3.8%. Those rate increases are normal. That means that our interest rates are finally starting to normalize despite a bad stock market. So how did the stock market do year to date? How's it going so far? We've had 24 weeks in our economy. What does it look like from a stock market point of view? Ladies and gentlemen, when you get your 401k statement in a couple of weeks, unless we have some dramatic upside, you're going to see an average of 21.9% on the loss side, because that's where we're at as of Friday today. And then, of course, we have my wonderful friend, Mr. Robert Press. Mr. Robert Press, 15 weeks ago, some of our fans might remember, gave me a call. He's not a client. I don't owe him any fiduciary duty, nor can I give him any fiduciary advice. But he was trying to pick my brain, and I said to him very generally, you know, Bob, I don't know. The market's not looking too good. You know, I'd be very careful right now. He says, I'm all in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Bob is all in at a negative 15.2%. So, ladies and gentlemen, happy Father's Day, right? That's where we're at. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to remember something. Let me share with you right now, as I said to Robert when he gave me a call and he almost had a heart attack. He said to me, Anthony, what's going to happen? And I said to Bob, watch the show, because I'm going to show you what you and everybody else watching this show should do. So, ladies and gentlemen, a little tip, if I might. When we go to the next slide, As I've just indicated, you can see that from the beginning of the year, the stock market has gone down very considerably, right? About 20%. When we go to the next slide, you will see that you're looking at higher gas prices coupled with corporate greed. What do I mean by that? Well, here in New York, according to people that have called me and have told me various things, gas is much higher than that amount, which is a nationwide average. So what's the difference between what you're paying versus the nationwide average? Corporate greed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a nice dual problem, right? We have actually a triple type of problem. You're losing 20%. The market's continuing to go down. Prices are continuously going up. Oh, God, what do I do? Well, let's go to the next slide, ladies and gentlemen. Because without giving you fiduciary advice, although you're welcome to call me at any time, let me remind our audience of one very important fact. Long-term investing. Since World War II, every time the market has gone down 20%, it is an opportune time to buy. Because as you will see on this chart, the following year, the market goes back up. And it goes back up an average of 10 to 15% that year. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The next chart on the right, well, that's 10 years after that. Is that hope and speculation? In one sense it is, but in another sense, these are the historical returns marked and counted and dated since World War II. So, what am I suggesting? Well, again, I can't exercise my fiduciary duty on this show, but I can remind you market history, that even though we're looking bad at the moment, hold those wheels, stay that course. Bob, don't jump over any buildings or under any buildings, and everybody's going to be fine. We'll be back in a moment.
America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free multilingual borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Segment 2. And let me say before segment 2, I want to thank our sponsors for the show. And if anybody would like a commercial with a sponsor, please feel free to give me or our producer a call, and we would love to have you as a sponsor on the show. Segment 2, how to make a properly correct budget, part 3. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to grab a pen and a pad. This is our continuing series on budgeting, and this will take up the bulk of our show because we got a lot of meat here that we're going to cover. So let's start off. You can put up the first slide. Let's start off by talking about how to make a budget. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into part 3, let's remind ourselves what part 1 was about. Part 1 was about cleaning up misconceptions, right? When we talked about budgeting, we said budgeting was about tracking your income. We also said budgeting was about tracking your expenses. And then, of course, when you subtract your expenses from your income, it's going to tell you either A, what's left, or B, what's not left, right? So remember, budgeting is in essence a financial plan to ensure your success for your short-term and long-term goals. So, misconception we kill right now. Number one, budgeting is not for short-term needs. Budgeting is for short-term and long-term goals and dreams. This is why we budget. So that was part one. Then we'll go to the next slide. Remember when we spoke about budgeting last week and we talked about part two, we talked about defining the ingredients that go into a budget, right? We talked about making sure you put down your sources of income, and we covered many areas of income. And of course, I'm sure you know yours. Remember, when we talk about income, we want to talk about after tax income, right? Because that's the money that comes out of your pocket. That's the money we want to, that you use every day. So that's the money we want to track. And then we want to write down our expenses. And when we write down our expenses, we want to write them down in a variety of different ways. The first thing we want to recognize is what are our fixed expenses, right? What are those expenses we're going to pay every month, right? We know they're coming in every month, right? There might be a couple of dollars difference here and there, but we know they're there every month, right? Could be the rent bill, could be the cable bill, could be the TV bill, right? But whatever it is, we know we're getting it every month. And then, of course, you have what we call variable expenses, right? Well, variable expenses are different, right? Those are expenses that change from day to day. If I call up my producer after the show and say, hey, you're taking me out to dinner? Well, I guess he's got a brand new variable expense, right? So, I want you to take your expenses and track them from fixed to variable. And that's only part one of tracking, ladies and gentlemen, because we also talked about in part two to also track your expenses from what we call needs versus wants, right? So when we talk about a need, we talk about the rent. When we talk about a need, we talk about food. If you have food in the refrigerator and you decide to go out to eat, well, that's not a need. That's a want. So define your expenses not just by fixed expenses and variable expenses, but also by needs and wants. So those were the first two things that we covered, ladies and gentlemen, just as a reminder. So when we go to the next slide, let's again remind ourselves about the purpose of budgeting. We take that income, we subtract it by all our expenses, and then it gives us our savings, right? So when we go to the next slide, we know we want to take that savings and use it for the future. So I have a future too. If you remember last week, ladies and gentlemen, when I showed you my budget, this is the same budget, I said I had a short-term goal. I said I wanted to buy a car in 6 months, right? I found out that if I had a $3,000 down payment, I can get this car in 6 months. Well, let's look at my current budget. My current budget has after taxes of $2,500. I got a variety of expenses. You'll see I charted down the needs versus the wants, and the total amount of expenses came out to $2,403. So I've got something left. Thank God. I got $97 a month left. Well, I want to get that car in 6 months, right? So if I stick with this budget, I'll have $582 out of that goal of $3,000. Well, that still means I need $2,418 more, or $82 more a month, right? If I'm going to try to get to $3,000 this way. I could make up the difference by using other savings, but I want to see if I can really pritch it or most of it out of my current budget, right? So again, I'm saving $97 a month. It's bringing me to $582 if I save it every month for 6 months, but that still leaves me short $2,418 or $82 a month. ladies and gentlemen, you'll also see on the right-hand side is very important. You see the needs versus the wants. You'll see on the needs, I have $1,873 of needs, or in percentages, 75%. 75% of my money goes to my needs. And then you'll see the $530 of expenses, those are my wants. That's my 25%. Right? All right. So I want to try to find that $82. So here we go. Let's go to the next slide. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we can find that $82, we got to make sure I use the right budget, right? Because just like we're defining now, we want to be sure we're using the right budget for the right need. And if you remember this chart, I said there were several different types of budgeting structures, right? So on the next chart and the next several charts, we're going to go over these one by one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, I can't go through all of these specifically. So always feel free to give me a call if you want access to these charts, or if you want me to explain them in more definitiveness, feel free to give me a call. But let me give you an overview of what these charts are. So let's go to the first one on our next slide. That's called the no budget, right? What is the no budget? The no budget, ladies and gentlemen, is, as it's defined, moving money around without it being written down. Right? They should call that the Doreen budget, which is my sister. Right? She doesn't know where her money goes, and who knows? Some of you might be using the same type of budget, right? You might be moving that money around and don't write it down, and you therefore don't have a clue whether you're up or down or sideways or anything else. That's why they call it the no budget budget. When we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about real quickly a budget called the spending first budget. Now, this could be a little bit towards what you might be looking for, because the spending first budget is a budget that builds on spending for the whole purpose of savings. So it's to create a budget for the purpose of savings, right? When we go to the next slide, we also have a budget called the anti-budget, right? I'm sure you might remember that phrase when you saw the chart. Well, what is the anti-budget? The anti-budget is very simple. Again, they should, think of, instead of Doreen, they should call this Wendy, my other sister, the Wendy budget. The anti-budget is three things, ladies and gentlemen. A, pay yourself first. What do I mean by pay yourself first? Well, remember those wants that, I said I had 25%? Well, maybe I want to make that 75%, right? So pay myself first. Make sure I pay my bills second. And then number three, if there's anything left, just feel free to use it any way I want. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I show you that chart is because these are all scientific methods. If you were to take budgeting in school, you would learn these things. I make a lot of money in school teaching some of these scientific charts. Let me leave it like that. So let's go to the next one. The next one is called the 50-30-20 budget. Some of you might recognize it because a famous politician created it just recently, within the last 10 years. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. So what is the 50-30-20 budget? Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. You take 50% of your after-tax money in theory, and you make sure it goes to your needs, right? My needs were 75%. The budget says, see if you can do it with 50. 30%. 30% goes for my wants. Okay, well, in my initial budget, it was 25%, right? So, all right, I'm getting a little closer, right? And then I'm supposed to take the other 20% and look at savings, whether I put it in a bank account or an investment account, so I can have it for my goal. So the 50-30-20 budget in general theory is supposed to represent 50% needs, 30% wants, 20% savings. Can it be tweaked along the way? We'll talk about that in a few moments. Let's go to the next budget. The next slide, it says zero-based budget, right? That's another one. People see that and they don't understand. Now, the reason why a lot of people don't understand this one is because it's actually geared for small business people. It's not really geared for consumers. When small business people look at product and distribution of product, what they look at is the cost efficiency factor. And those cost efficiency factors can be very important. So if you're a small business owner, this is something you might want to look at a little bit more. As a consumer, don't look at it at all, doesn't apply to you. But let's look at the last budget. The last budget might apply to you. The last budget is called the spending ceiling budget. Now, some of you might notice, ladies and gentlemen, that's when we say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to put myself on a real tight budget. I'm going to make sure I spend X amount on this. And I'm not going to go over that. It'd be nice if I could stay under that, but I'm going to make sure I only spend this amount and no more and no less. And as we know, so a lot of times we create what's called these spending caps. That's what they're called in legal terms, spending caps. And a lot of times it's always hard to comply with them. So when we look at these budget examples, right, let me summarize it all in three different areas, right? The first area is we don't care, right? Some of those charts that I just mentioned, it basically says who needs the budget, right? Who cares? I'll just spend my money any old way I want to spend it, right? That's what some of them charts, in my opinion, say. Now, the second area that I think some of these charts make a lot of sense is that they concentrate on savings-based goals, right? So those are the areas that you really want to look at. And then, of course, the third area, as you heard me mention a few moments ago, is more of a business area where we talk about efficiency, right? So when we talk about these types of budgets, again, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about different type of lifestyles, different train of thoughts, and these budgets relate to some of those thoughts. So keeping that in mind, let's go to the next slide. So before we can talk about any particular budgets or any particular solutions, let's talk about you for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. If you're still with me, I want to congratulate you because by now I have a lot of people I talk to when it comes to budgeting. They don't want to talk about budgeting. They don't understand the misconceptions that I mentioned earlier, right? There's a whole bunch of problems that people have with budgeting. So the first problem that I run into a lot, and you'll see it on the chart, is that people say, oh my God, it's so restrictive, right? If I got to do proper budgeting, that means they automatically think, oh, you're going to take away my wants, right? Remember I said wants versus needs? Well, the first thing they think of when you talk about budgeting is, oh, you're going to take away my wants. So, I don't want to talk about that. Get out of my office, right? So, of course, that's the first problem. There are several problems. The second problem is income fluctuation, right? You might be a part-timer. You might be a small business owner, and your income fluctuates every month. So, yes, it's hard to budget properly when your income fluctuates every month. The third area of concern that a lot of people have is that they try to create what we call an ideal budget, right? Like you heard me mention a few moments ago with spending cap, right? It's very easy to create a spending cap budget and say, okay, here you go, stick to it, right? But the reality is that we live in a different world today, right? You heard me mention about inflation a few moments ago. And, I can't get out of my mind, if you're a fan of the show, you heard me mention about how my $25 bag of goods went to $35. It's now $45. And I got to go shopping tomorrow, and I'm scared to find out what it's going to be then, right? So budgeting is not based on idealism. It's based on reality, right? So we got to get some of these things out of our minds so we can do proper budgeting. The biggest problem, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to our next slide, is that we're not using the right budget method, right? You heard me mention a few moments ago about those budget charts. And ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to Anthony for a moment, right? I said, I'm following my budget. I got some money left. So far, so good. But I got a goal. Right? I want to be able to save money every month. And I have a goal where I need an extra $82 a month. Right? So, what are some of my short-term solutions? What are some of my long-term solutions? Let's talk about some of these solutions, ladies and gentlemen, because I have a feeling some of these might apply to you. Short-term solution number one, reevaluate your wants and see if you can convert those wants to savings. The needs, well, you need them, right? I'm not telling you to eliminate your wants. I'm telling you to reevaluate your wants. Number two, make sure you count your needs. I sound like a broken record, right? Let me tell you why I sound like a broken record, ladies and gentlemen, because that is one of the keys to proper budgeting, right? Forget the wants. We need to know what we need to survive every week, every month, every day. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, I showed you my budget. It said $1,873 in needs, right? Forget the wants. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? $1,873 a month in needs comes out to $22,476 a year in needs. And that's after tax. So let's throw the tax back onto it, right? If you live in the state of New York, federal, city, state, that comes out to 40%. Well, that's not $22,000 anymore, ladies and gentlemen. That means I need to make $31,000 a year just to satisfy $22,000 a year worth of needs. Forget the wants, the needs at $1,873 a month. Once I satisfy those needs, everything else is gravy. Wouldn't you agree? I hope so. Those are some of the short-term solutions. Let's talk about a long-term solution. Let's go to the next chart. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard me a few moments ago mention about the 50-30-20 budget. I want you to join us next week because we're going to dive into this in more detail so I can show you how you can get more money out of your budget and how I can get these extra $82 so I can go buy a car in 6 months out of the budget. Again, 50-30-20. 50 is needs, 30 is wants, 20 is savings. And as I share with my clients, it's not a question of matching the 20% for the savings, right? What you should do is just recognize that you want something there, right? Now, that could be 2%, that could be 20%. Again, look at my budget, right? $97 I'm saving, right, a month. Well, what is that in proportion to my budget? That's only 4%. That's all that is. That's only 4%, but at least it's on the positive side, right? Again, that's what budgeting is all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to join us next week for our final chapter where we get into the Elizabeth Warren budget. That's who created this, ladies and gentlemen. The 50-30-20 budget, where we'll apply it, fine-tune it, and show you more savings right out of your budget. We'll be back in a moment.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer. This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely convince you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And as I always like to say, Happy New Year, because I always say every day is different. So I say Happy New Year. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you some short announcements, and then we're going to share with you a sort of a new segment. It's going to be bantering off and on, called The Professor's Opinion. But let me quickly just shout out some short announcements. As I said last week, just as a reminder, we have a very big July. We're trying to line up for you. We're going to be talking about budgeting, but on the government level. We're going to be talking about our New York City budget that just got approved. We'll be talking about our New York State budget that just got approved. And we've got verbal commitments from both Councilwoman Farina Sanchez and Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson that will be on our show in July to talk about those areas in greater detail. And that sounds like a wonderful thing. Let me also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe before you leave us today, so that way you'll join us every week. This week, ladies and gentlemen, we had a decision by the Federal Reserve Board that I think they were put in a no-win situation. If you remember a week or two ago, when inflation just went out of control, President Biden got on the microphone and he said, well, I'm going to try to help, but we have to look at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve Board is in charge of inflation, and they're the ones that got to take the lead. And the Federal Reserve Board, run by Jerome Powell, said this week, Mr. Biden, you're absolutely correct. It's the Federal Reserve Board's responsibility to manage inflation. So what did they decide? They decided that short-term interest rates will go up 75 basis points. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't take a world-renowned economist like myself to tell you that when interest rates go up that high, that fast, you risk lowering the economy, right? And when you have inflation as high as it is, you also risk lowering the economy. So now the future of our economy is now in Joe Biden's hands. The future of our economy is now in Congress's hands. So if you haven't heard, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad I heard it, a couple of hours ago today, there was an announcement by the White House that President Biden is getting his economic team with leaders of Congress to come up with plans to get the economy moving. Understanding that the Federal Reserve Board policies, which is matched on inflation, not the economy, is going to make our economy go down. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, when the economy goes down, in the process of lowering inflation, we also lower the prospects of future jobs. So what is Joe Biden proposing with Congress? Well, they're discussing different ways to manage the federal budget deficit. Joe Biden believes, according to this afternoon's reports, that lowering the budget deficit should have a significant effect on raising the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just quickly say I'm glad Joe Biden is trying to stay on top of the situation, but I don't think he has the right economic team. Even if you go by the analogy of saying that you're going to lower the budget deficit, basically what you're saying is that the federal government is going to be spending less money than what they were spending before. Now, is that a good thing? Of course, that's a good thing, ladies and gentlemen, but it's an even better thing when our economy is moving, when it is growing, and especially growing in a non-inflationary policy. As I said earlier today, we are basically in what I call supply side economics going backwards. In the 1980s, supply side economics, in theory, made production move. And as production moved, prices went down. As prices went down, the economy went up. Well, on the supply side today, we're looking at just the opposite, right? You don't see things in the supermarket anymore, right? Where's the baby formula, right? Where's all this, right? You don't see any goods in the store anymore. And when you do, how much are they? Twice, 3 times more than what they paid before? Ladies and gentlemen, my opinion, as I've always said, go get a financial advisor. Our financial markets are now very, very tricky. Be financially focused, and happy Father's Day to everyone. Take care.
Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with financial